Okay, there we go. And actually, if you can go to that original link, I tried to make links within that document to go to the different items. What would be awesome is to get some, just sort of anyone who's on the call, if you can sort of fill that out, let us know you're here. And if you're interested in being involved in this committee moving forward, give us sort of an idea of what it is you want to do. And so that could be a combination of, hey, you just once a year want to maybe come to our sessional committee meeting, or it could be, hey, I would really want to be involved. And that I'll kind of keep shouting out at that. If someone can help me, because it's kind of hard to monitor all the parts, and keep posting that link to the agenda so people can then get in there and kind of link to things as they need to. So I found out last year.
There's a couple of comments in the chat that your attendance list is view only.
Oh, it is? Geez, oh, Pete, how does one fix that? Does anyone know?
You should just be able to go into the document and hit share in the top right-hand corner and say, anyone who has the link.
That's what I thought I had done. So anyone on the internet with a link can view. Oh, I need to make that something so everyone can edit, right? Sorry to be
yes,
editor. But I
yep.
Thanks everyone for the tutorial on a Google Doc. Just gets better and better. Thanks. We're going to find that with the question sheet too, so I should go ahead and fix that while we're kind of going through this so that doesn't end up in an issue. Perfect. There we go. Back to that. Thanks for letting me know. Any other comments at this point? Okay. So with looking at that, what I thought I would do first is kind of go through sort of what we have here. I am a member at large for the SPNHC Council. I think that's how you put it. And I learned last year that there's usually sort of some initiative that the member at large takes up. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about is sort of reenacting a straight education committee that dealt with things like education outreach that are done by the museums and the curators and the collectors. And so there are two other groups that already exist. I see Carrie on here because my screen shows Carrie, but she's done a ton of work with emerging professionals. Steven's done a ton of work with outreach and professional development. And what there wasn't anymore was something that specifically looked at the idea of how we use our museums and our collections to teach in both formal and informal settings and in outreach. So one of the other first steps is to look at those other two committees and see if all was going well in terms of the division of jobs in that. We met very early in, right after the meeting, or relatively early, it was last fall. And at that time, after we all talked about this, it pretty much came through that people were pretty comfortable. They were comfortable with the division of labor, had some plans moving forward. And so there wasn't really a need to revisit that much. But the other two areas did seem to have a need. One was SPNHC's contribution to education. And one of the things that we looked at over the year was things like identifying gaps. And then the next step, which hasn't been addressed really that fully yet, is the idea of proposing short-term and long-term goals. And so since this is a new committee and a new sessional group, I'm really open to anyone's comments, suggestions, or ideas. So you'll notice the questions, comments thing, which should be a link for you if you got into the agenda. You can write anything you want there in terms, but that will be where I can kind of keep a record of people's suggestions and ideas. We did make a call out to the general membership. We got at that meeting several attendees, and I can scroll down and show you. We had Carrie, Nicholas, Jeff came to those meetings, and we also had Carrie Eaton join us, and it gave us a chance to talk through some things. Since then, there's been a group that sort of evolved over the years, coming out of several different initiatives. We've had now, this will be the third year we've done a share fair. And each year it's sort of grown in popularity. And what we're sharing are education and outreach resources that people have developed. And it's done in sort of this roundtable format. You can go to more than one table. Most of the time people have either handouts or materials, and you can learn how those are developed or how you could use them in the classroom. And After talking, Molly Phillips from Bio and I have been working on that for the last couple of years and thought, well, maybe this is something that Spinach would want to take on to do more regularly or continue doing regularly. And so we're hoping that the Education Chair Committee can actually take that on maybe down the road from now, and it can come a little bit more from the society. In putting together the Education Chair Fair, we asked people to put their materials online. So one of the things we did, and I'll go here, is you can now find a website that has these it's part of the Spinach website, where we link the materials that people are going to talk about in the Share Fair. And a goal or a way forward that we were thinking of is starting to keep these in perpetuity, perhaps curate them a little bit, and have Spinach host some of those materials longer term. If we decide to go forward with that, one of the things that'll happen is we will be able to collaborate with the Cubes Hub and create, I'm showing you here, materials are a place where we can put natural history collection based materials. Molly and I have been moving that forward, kind of looking to see what sort of tags we want to associate with them. Right now, this is heavily biased towards Bio educational materials and Blue educational materials. So you can see as you go through. But the goal would be is to have any group that might be creating or hosting natural history collection modules would be able to load them up, and this would be a common place where they could be explored. What I really like about this method is we can have, you can get to these materials from the Spinach website, but that there's some statistics kept on these in terms of the number of times they've been visited, the number of times they've been downloaded. And we all know how we're always looking for metrics to show how our collections have value. So the other thing that, and this just came up in another meeting, but this has come up a couple of times, is right now there is not, unless this is changed, a diversity and inclusion committee within Spinach. Lots of times in my experience working with these and some other societies is that there's a really tight overlap between education, outreach, and inclusion, and that perhaps that's something this group could look to, thinking how we could do that within our society on any sort of scale. And some of the things that we could do is think about Spinach supporting ongoing efforts and just being a little more visible in that process. Another is we could think of initiatives that Spinach could do itself. And we know that diversity is not the hallmark of our community, even though we all study biodiversity. So making a more conscious attempt to be more inclusive, I think, would be a valuable addition to all of the great work that Spinach has been doing. So the last part of this is I'll go to the questions document. If anybody is watching any of the comments, because I can't even for the life of me tell you if there were any, then are there any questions, things that are coming up? I'm going to open the chat and see. Everything's editable, and it looks like Molly very nicely has linked to the Spinach Share Fair. So I would love to hear from people their thoughts on what can Spinach do / what can the sessional committee do to promote E&O. And right under that, there is the inclusion and diversity component of it. And so as a society, we are lucky that there's so much flexibility in what we can do. So it'd be great to hear what anyone's thinking or what they think the community could do. So please, someone write something so I end up like having something to talk about, or this will be really weird.
Do we need to just write it, or can we talk about it?
I say talk about it if you've got it.
Okay. So something.
Who is speaking right now?
Oh, me, Carrie.
Oh, hi, Carrie.
Hi, Anna. Something the Emerging Professionals Committee has talked about basically since we began is the need for essentially professional development trainings that happen via webinar that emerging professionals especially can log in and attend on a variety of subjects. And I know that there are a lot of these out there, but it's something that, I mean, Spinach has best practices documents, and we have workshops that happen at the conferences, but emerging professionals, often we come back around to like, well, maybe we should try to do some kind of webinars. And we've never accomplished that because most of us are emerging professionals, so we're not a lot of the people who need to be leading those. But it is something that I think would be really nice. And now that we have the Zoom license, it's something that we could do very easily.
Yeah. No,
So do you have some topic ideas that you could maybe put underneath there? And maybe there's an idea that we could do those collaboratively, because there's a couple different webinars that I've worked on. You know, you start hitting up everyone you know, but when everybody's working on it together, you end up with way better speakers. So that could be something that maybe you guys could lead or we could support.
I think one of the first ones we could start with is something on diversity and inclusion, similar to the thing that's happening tomorrow. We talked about in the membership committee. I think there's another group doing a diversity and inclusion workshop tomorrow. But maybe Spinach could do something like that. And here, I can write these down while I talk, apparently.
I'm writing.
Let's see.
Oh. I don't really care where anybody writes anything.
Okay. And then just basic skills on any topics. We've talked about a lot of different topics, but simple things like best practices in an herbarium when you're mounting specimens, like simple things like that, to maybe more complex things dealing with digitization and so on. The kind of things that often we can experience at Spinach meetings, but since not everybody can go to every meeting, they just completely miss out.
Now, has Jeff weighed in on any of these? Because I want to make sure that, because this might fall under professional development.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if anyone's on here who knows those better, just because these seem focused in a way towards those advanced professional skills. Not that I would think they're not worth doing, and not thinking that the education committee, there's no reason why we couldn't, but I want to be cognizant of the fact that that seems to fit under the professional development.
You are right. We've had this conversation in a lot of groups over time, and so it's my first thing that I put out there. But certainly those are topics that we should collaborate with the professional development committee on. So we should probably come up with topics more centered around actual education, like in the classroom.
Well, and informal. So where I was thinking that this could go is something, there's a lot of education initiatives out there that are looking at, and I know you guys have things like your node group, and even though that's professional development, but pointing to things like that, which has to do with undergraduate education and programs, different existing resources, and then provide a venue for people that maybe they have their own educational materials and they want to disseminate them or make them available. Similar to the like 8 that we, or 9 that we now have in the ShareFair, but I mean, there are so many great tools and modules that people are using. Getting them someplace so other people can access them and utilize them would be fantastic. And that kind of falls along the lines, I think, of what you were saying, but it moves it in a little more traditional education type stuff.
I see what you're talking about.
And then Julie was talking, who's in our group as well, was talking about the idea of some of her outreach materials that she has made. And she's done these boxes that go out, and having a place too where people could talk about those or put those. But that's sort of an idea. I'm not sure that that's what the community wants. And that's why I'm hoping to hear from some people of ideas about that. So I'm seeing someone say, list where there's grants to promote education outreach. That would be awesome. I'm looking to see if we have other comments. And then up here, how to promote inclusivity and diversity, public statements. I think that that is really valuable. There hasn't been a statement that's come out of Spinach.
There has not.
And what are people's thoughts on that? What is Spinach's thought on that?
I mean, we've been a little distracted with the conference, so we haven't done it. But I mean, I think that's something we'll discuss in the council meeting, and I hope that there's support for a statement. I hope there's more than a statement. That's, you know, that's pretty easy to do, but that we can actually follow up with some real actions. And those we'll discuss. I mean, what we were talking about in the membership committee, oh, you were there, is that it seems like this is kind of a topic that cuts across a number of our committees. And so we should try to put together some representative of the different committees who, you know, who will draft a statement that we can approve, and will suggest some ways. We can do some things on our own. We can also join other efforts that are going on. You know, it'd be great if we have a variety of actions that we can take, as opposed to just stating support, which is great start.
I think that putting some thought into that is pretty critical. And that's, with everybody doing that right now, it is very easy to misfire on those statements.
That's,
so
yeah.
Wanting to make sure that they're done well is a task.
Mm-hmm.
And I see Lynn Sharp, who has pointed out there's lots of people who use online collections resources to help pivot to online. There have been, and there will be in the Share Fair tomorrow or Thursday, several examples of that. There is definitely, by using digital data, you end up with a resource that flips to online a little bit easier. And Lynn, it's my hope that we start to represent those better. So so that those resources are out there and maybe more accessible. If you have any specific suggestions, please do put them in there on how we would want to do that. So it looks like Professional Development Committee plans to formalize a mentorship program, and that the mentors should go through the ally training, diversity training. I think that makes a lot of sense. Whoever wrote that, that would be a good thing to provide, maybe even for all the members of the society interested in doing that. One of the things I've always been hoping Botany would do, and I'm punting to that because I've been on their diversity committee, is that putting those resources in a place people can access them, or curating them in a way so people get what they want, I think can be really valuable. And it doesn't necessarily have to be reinvented. There's some great places out there where people have collated some of that, but that might be a really nice thing for our society to do. So I keep looking down here. I see the virtual collection tours. That would actually be really nice to see some of those, since the collections can be, especially right now, since they're not so easily accessible. But it is something that once we're back in our collections, but we can't yet bring people into them, that could be a really cool project. One of the things I've always wanted to do is, I love this, Paul, I think, was the one who started the 5-minute specimen talk about the coolest specimen, is how cool it would be to actually make those into little 5-minute videos that we could just have and show in our classrooms when we're talking about something neat. And it looks like the Carnegie Museum on YouTube is a really good example of that, whoever is writing that down. I find this really distracting, like trying to follow this while also running a meeting where you can't see anyone. I also think the 5-minute concept is one of those ways that we can really start hitting up the ways that we could get stuff in the classroom, because those are short enough that people would use them and students would watch them. We get much longer, and that's not the attention span that classes are used to.
I like that idea too. And maybe we could group them into categories so they're easier to find when you're teaching.
We could also do, I think it'd be really cool. I've always wanted to do this. I wanted to like reach out to you and Travis and do like a challenge, but I didn't know how to do that. So I didn't. Plus I know I'd get like way out of hand with it. Is something where we make and actually have students with a competition or something that's sort of meant to be fun with, give us your, you know, most charismatic 5 minutes from your collection and see what we could get out of that. I think that could always be a really cool way to get some really neat resources.
That would be a fun way to engage people in Spinach when we aren't at meetings too. Just all across Spinach, everybody submit something. The community could vote.
Yeah.
That would be, and that might be something that emerging professionals might be interested in helping us do.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And here's one, information on how to collaborate with educators. And I'm assuming, and maybe somebody can say, is it how to find educators to collaborate with, or is it best practices for working with an educator? I'm just getting some nuance to that. Or is it you're looking for like, how do you reach out and do that? And maybe it's all of those, but that would be, so you're supposed to interpretive dance. That was Andy Bentley's idea. I think dance is appropriate for this group. And there's Molly saying she spent all of those on information on how to collaborate with educators. So, you know, that is something that I think that there's sometimes some misunderstandings about the different drivers for different teachers or types of teachers and what they're looking for. That could be really valuable there as well. I'm looking to see if there are any, I'm kind of trying to follow the different chats or parts of it. I'm seeing that the professional, okay, that was already there. So this is identify your audience, then finds friends from that audience to help. I think that's someone, I don't know if that's a recommendation on how to do that or a recommendation on how to find the information. So any other comments moving forward? One of the, I'm gonna go check in, see if people have been signing up for the education, or people could make sure that they do that. Oh, that's awesome. And one thing is that finding out who wants to be involved with further would be fantastic. It looks like we've got some names on there and people have put stuff in. So if you want to work more with your museum educators, so some poor person's typing right now and having to watch us all do it. Okay, someone's saying talk to your museum educators. You know, the thing I notice is that we can, sometimes there needs to be entry points into this. Sometimes it's about maybe not even delivering materials as much as helping make the connection with people who don't know the materials are there or with the utilization of the materials. So that's something we could think about down the road. Right away, I think the idea would be to continue this, what we've been doing, Molly and I together have been doing, trying to pull some resources together. Do people see a value in that? So Julie has a great comment here. She says, I think it's important to align educational materials to educational standards. And so she's pointing out the next generation science standards, which is for K through 12, but there's also standards at the college level, and there's some societies that have put out some standards as well. And she says, do many museums do this? That's a question for y'all. Have you seen examples of that? And then maybe we can establish best practices for offering educational material. Julie and I had also talked about having some formatting, like trying to see like a recommendation of the parts that people might want to include if putting educational materials out there, like what are your objectives and what are your notes to the teachers, and do you have an answer key that you can also provide? But I don't know if that meets all the things you were talking about, Julie, but that is, so Jess says, Sam Noble does that for their on-site programs when teachers bring in students and on citizen science programs, but not much for the recent online avenues. So it sounds like that's something that's coming from a few people. And I'm going through, so there's someone looking at a mentoring program that brings together educators and collection museum professionals. So aware that everyone here has a million and one things going on, and we have, is it 7:30, Barb, that we have the committee?
Council is at 7:30.
Okay.
You have
no,
the floor until
might wanna
7.
do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to push this to last a whole half hour or a whole hour if we don't need it to. I'm hoping people will really consider signing up to be part of the education community, or even just to hear about what's going on with it. And might give me a perception of whether our community really wants that or not. And other than that, any comments or information from anyone? All right. Well, then, Carrie Harris, something I'm interested in finding ways to host teachers in our collections, maybe something where we offer professional development to teachers to attend, or even just an informal night. That's a great idea. All our exhibits and programs are aligned with K through 12. So that's Lynn Sharp. Lynn, where are you at? Are you at Yale? Am I getting that right? So that's something too, where maybe for, no, she's tiny. Well, that is something that a lot of people have done, but I'm not sure everybody knows what those standards are. So that would be great to see some examples, because I think it would help people who might be trying to do it that don't know what that looks like.
Mhm.
So I think we've kind of hit the end of our half hour. And if there are other comments, do feel free to email me or contact me or join our committee. So we'd love to have you.
Anna, you have the floor for another half hour.
I know, it doesn't look like I need it.
Okay, just letting you know.
And then there's
Anna, hi, it's Lynn. I just figured out how to unmute myself.
Oh, great.
Sorry. So I was using the chat, but I'm both education and collections, and that's why we align a lot with K-12, but that's because I'm tiny. And that's why I'm encouraging people to really work with your educators if you want, because they want somebody to work with.
Well, going back to Molly's sort of point that maybe some best practices in that, maybe it's, Lynn, you seem to know how to do it. Maybe there's some ways we could put some best practices in there for others to know how to reach out, what to expect, I think, a little bit, and what that looks like.
It probably does so vary by institution.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So where are you?
Oh, I'm at Central Michigan University.
So same kind of situation.
Yep. Smaller, but a lot of the materials I deliver are online, or we do them in our own classrooms. So just one of the reasons to get Spinach involved in this is to help disseminate materials more. And because we seem to be having a lot of interest in our share fairs, so maybe something that we can keep going during the rest of the year to get those materials out there for people seems like an advantage. And I think a lot of people still don't know about NGSS standards, or in the undergrad world is vision and change and what that means. So that alignment may seem, if you've done it, what it is, but it's not always so easy if people don't know it.
Right, good point. It's just even sharing that vocabulary is really important.
So here's something that Molly is saying. She knows at our museum, we're still trying to develop more communication between our researchers and our educators. Maybe talking about what works for others would be really helpful. So that again, Lynn and Molly would be, so where there's been effective relationships, how's that worked? And how's that been most productive? And then Jen is saying she agrees. And that usually there's challenges for everyone and maybe others can benefit from them. So it's a thought too about a potential even mini symposium or something where people share their success stories on collaborating on educational materials. That could be a topic that people had some interest in. So here's topics for future webinars, pairing activities with NGSS and Vision and Change. There's a couple other initiatives that are coming out in the US, one with ecology. Botany has also had a statement about this that could maybe, we could get different people to sort of give webinars explaining what those standards are. And that might make it easier to do the alignment.
That sounds like a great idea. Somebody write that down.
I can't, apparently I
know.
Can't multitask.
I'm with you, sister.
Do we have any other comments from anyone that we can sort of, now's our opportunity, as Andy pointed out, to really decide, like, what else can this group do? And is there an interest? I'm looking to see if anything else has been written. There's webinar and aligning various, oh, it looks like somebody's helping type all that in. And I think that.
I would just say that I really encourage you to make use of the Zoom, of webinars, of meetings. This hasn't been a strong tradition in our society. We really haven't even had a Zoom license very long, but we do now, and everybody's using Zoom. And there is no reason why there couldn't be continual things, that whether they're big webinars or smaller meetings, it's there to be used. And we don't pay any more whether we use it every day or every once a year. So there's many reasons why this would be great, not just the content we'd be providing, but it's definitely a membership benefit, even though we probably wouldn't, restrict it to members only. But it definitely keeps spinach in the eye and probably helps us. So there's every reason to say, and the more interesting and creative things you can think to do, the better.
I'm seeing a +1 to spinach webinars for Molly. And Molly knows her webinars. This is something too with people are getting a little exhausted sometimes with webinars, and I think we noticed that sometimes with the ones from ID Bio was doing a lot of them, and you get used to, it's nice to have them regularly, but then it gets a little easy for it to be overload. So it might be something where maybe working together with some of these other initiatives to pull it together, make spinach part of them, make sure that they meet the spinach needs, but then it saves all the work from having to be done in multiple places.
Yeah, that's great.
So there's a thought. And the beauty is you can keep them in perpetuity, so people don't have to see them synchronously.
Right.
So that can be a value there as well.
It's also great in that case to bring together different communities,
That could be kind of interesting too, because we don't really do much with other types of museums. And I wonder if we did try that, what would come up? That could be really interesting if we were talking to different tribes. Oh, and it looks like Carrie's cat is actually chatting now.
Aw.
I know. Mine was baying in the other room, so my dogs insist on being involved in all my webinars in one embarrassing capacity or another.
I've got 2 here and they're being very bad.
Because they know you don't want them to be.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing some people on here who's normally not so very quiet, and I'm wondering if there are any other comments or ideas that people have. And do feel free to jump in.
I was going to mention, everybody has the facility to unmute themselves. You don't have to use the chat, you can talk.
Maybe people prefer the anonymity a little bit better. So Molly's toddler is loudly singing. So that's the addition from there. Well, oh, and Randy says yup, which means something. So is your toddler loudly singing? Is that the point, Randy?
Yes.
Oh, and here's an interesting idea. Oh my gosh, Jessa, that makes a ton of sense. I hadn't even thought of that. What if Spinach sponsored some virtual labs? Like, just made, that would be awesome. Especially since you can go through the collection, show them stuff, ask questions. They could go look at data online. I think that could be really cool. That's a very good idea, Jessa. I'm thinking too, because one of the things we're all struggling with is how we're going to take our field classes online if needed. It's funny till it happens to you.
Yeah.
Hey, we have a question from Australia. Sorry, very out of topic. Will sessions be recorded for later viewing? Just a little maybe tired of working in the middle of the night. Leslie, I would hope that everything would be available asynchronously so that we could have webinars, and we could even, if we had a lot of interest, we could hold a few on your time frame and make us get up in the middle of the night. And I think that would be valuable, because one of the things that I don't know that we've done is internationally collaborate much on education at all.
Yeah.
And so you guys have done some really amazing stuff in Australia, and it would be really cool to see what that was. Something I've thought is, could people just introduce their materials in webinars? Like, provide the materials, but also say, here's how you would use them. Here's the materials, everybody could have access to them, and then kind of go in a little bit more to like getting questions about specifics or things along those lines. So someone did herpetology. Oh, it was terrible. That's their comment. 2 weeks on a computer and not a biostation. Ooh. And Andy's saying all will be made available. So Leslie, I think that's a great idea. And Jessa, I'm sorry about your field herpetology. That had to be a hard one. I'm only laughing with you, not at you. All right. Well, again, I just want to respect people's time and not make this go on if we're not needing to talk about much, but please do consider joining us as a group to figure some of these things out. A lot of these just take time and interest, and they don't have to be a major commitment, but having more people to sort of spread this out could make a lot of cool stuff come out of Spinach. And personally, I think the society does so much, and if we could start reaching out and doing like just little stuff like this, I think it could make a big difference. So, and bring in new members and new people.